A gang of armed thugs cornered a young widow in an alley, forcing her to make an impossible choice. They pressed a gun to her temple and gave her 5 seconds to decide: her life or her dog's life. As she knelt there sobbing, clutching her trembling German shepherd puppy to her chest, the leader laughed and started counting down.
3,
5,
2,
4, 3.
1.
But what these criminals didn't know was that the quiet man in the Delta Force uniform, who had just turned into that alley, was about to show them why you never threaten the innocent in front of America's most elite warrior. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The streets of Memphis, Tennessee, had 2 faces. The main roads were alive with blues music and tourists, but certain neighborhoods became hunting grounds where predators knew the police response time was slow and witnesses even slower to come forward. Sarah Mitchell was about to learn this, the hardest way possible. But she wasn't alone, because sometimes the person who saves you isn't wearing a badge. They're wearing the green tactical uniform of Delta Force and carrying the skill set of America's deadliest operators. Sarah Mitchell pushed through the heavy glass doors of Walgreens, the afternoon sun hitting her face with an intensity that made her squint. In her right hand, she clutched a small paper bag containing antibiotics for Ranger, and in her left, her purse hung heavy on her shoulder. Heavier than it should be. Weighed down by the burden of bills, she wasn't sure how she'd pay this month. She paused on the sidewalk, checking her phone. 3:47 p.m. Her shift at Memphis General Hospital started at 5 p.m., which meant she had just over an hour to get home, give Ranger his medication, make sure he had food and water, and then catch the bus back across town to the hospital. It would be tight, but she'd learned to operate on tight schedules in the 8 months since. Michael died. 8 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days, to be precise. Not that she was counting. Sarah was 29 years old, though some days she felt twice that. She stood 5'5" with shoulder-length auburn hair that she usually wore in a practical ponytail for work. Her green eyes, once bright and full of dreams, had taken on a tired quality. The look of someone who'd been crying in the shower so nobody would hear, someone who'd learned to smile at patients while her heart was breaking, someone who was just trying to survive one day at a time. She'd been a nurse for 6 years, working in the emergency department at Memphis General. It was demanding work, 12-hour shifts on her feet, dealing with everything from heart attacks to gunshot wounds, from crying children to violent drunks. But she was good at it. She cared about her patients, remembered their names, held their hands when they were scared. It was one of the few things that still gave her life meaning. The other thing was the German shepherd puppy waiting for her at home. Ranger. Sarah's eyes misted as she thought about him. Michael had bought him as a surprise 2 weeks before the accident. "Every family needs a dog," Michael had said, his eyes sparkling with that boyish enthusiasm she'd fallen in love with. "And this little guy is going to love you just as much as I do. We'll train him together, watch him grow up alongside our kids someday." Michael had been a civil engineer, brilliant and kind, with plans for their future mapped out like one of his construction projects. They were going to buy a house with a big backyard. They were going to start a family. They were going to grow old together. Then a drunk driver ran a red light on a rainy Tuesday evening, and all those plans died with Michael on impact. The puppy had arrived 3 days after the funeral, delivered by Michael's best friend who'd been helping coordinate the surprise. Sarah had almost sent him back. How could she take care of a dog when she could barely take care of herself? But then the 8-week-old German shepherd had looked up at her with those innocent brown eyes, had stumbled over to her on unsteady puppy legs and licked her hand, and something in her broken heart had shifted. She'd named him Ranger because Michael had loved the outdoors, had talked about hiking the Appalachian Trail someday. The puppy became her lifeline, the only living thing that needed her, the only reason she got out of bed on the worst mornings when the grief felt like it would swallow her whole. Now Ranger was sick, some kind of stomach infection that had him lethargic and refusing food. The vet visit yesterday had cost $200 she didn't have, but she'd put it on the credit card that was already maxed out. The antibiotics in her purse had cost another $50. She'd figure it out somehow. She always did. Sarah looked at her phone again, pulling up the map. The bus route home would take 40 minutes. But there was a shortcut, a route through some older neighborhoods that would cut the travel time in half if she walked. She'd walked through that area in daylight before. It seemed safe enough. She made the decision and started walking. What Sarah didn't know was that 6 blocks away, another person was making a decision that would intersect with hers in ways neither could predict. Marcus Webb stood on the steps of the federal building in downtown Memphis, checking his watch. 2:15 p.m., his meeting with the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force had ended 30 minutes early, the kind of military efficiency he appreciated. His next coordination session wasn't until 4:30 p.m., which left him with over 2 hours of unexpected free time. At 6'2" and 200 pounds of lean muscle, Marcus cut an imposing figure in his green military tactical camouflage uniform. The Delta Force patch on his chest and the American flag on its shoulder were clearly visible, marking him as one of America's most elite warriors. His short-cropped dark hair was military regulation, his jaw strong and clean-shaven, and his steel-gray eyes held the look of a man who'd seen combat and emerged stronger for it. Marcus was 35 years old and had been in the Army for 17 years, the last 12 with 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, commonly known as Delta Force. He'd done 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and countless classified missions in places the public would never know about. He'd earned 2 Silver Stars, a Bronze Star with Valor, and enough other commendations to fill a shadow box that he kept in storage, because displaying it felt like bragging. He was in Memphis on temporary assignment, coordinating with federal agencies on a terrorism task force investigation. The work was important, tracking potential domestic threats and international trafficking networks, but after years of direct action missions, the planning and coordination sometimes felt slow. Still, it was necessary work, and Marcus had learned long ago that protecting America meant more than just kicking in doors and neutralizing targets. He'd worn his full uniform today because the meeting had been official military business, and protocol mattered. Some of the FBI agents had seemed impressed, maybe even a little intimidated by the Delta Force designation. Marcus didn't care about impressing people. The uniform was simply part of who he was, a visible representation of the oath he'd taken to protect and defend. Now, with time to kill, he considered his options. He could go back to his temporary quarters at the base and catch up on paperwork. He could hit the gym, his usual solution to downtime. Or he could do what he sometimes did in new cities, walk and observe. Marcus had learned early in his military career that understanding terrain, both physical and human, was essential to survival. Every city had rhythms, patterns, safe zones, and dangerous ones, walking. Through neighborhoods, watching how people moved and interacted, noting the condition of buildings and the presence or absence of law enforcement, these observations built a mental map that could prove invaluable. He decided to walk through the southern neighborhoods, an area he'd only driven through previously. The reports indicated it was a mixed area, some blocks stable and working class, others struggling with poverty and crime. Understanding the area better would help with his task force work. Marcus set off on foot, his combat boots hitting the pavement with steady rhythm. He moved with the relaxed awareness of someone trained to be constantly alert without appearing paranoid. He noted the check-cashing stores, the churches with security bars, the mix of renovated homes and boarded-up buildings. He saw people going about their business, mothers with strollers, old men sitting on porches, teenagers walking home from school. He also noted the corner where 3 young men watched passers-by with predatory interest, the alley where fresh graffiti marked gang territory, the absence of police presence in an area that clearly needed it. This was America too, Marcus thought. Not the America of recruitment posters or political speeches, but the real America where good people tried to survive in difficult circumstances, where poverty and crime created cycles that trapped generations. He'd fought in foreign countries to protect American freedom, but sometimes he wondered if the biggest battles were right here at home. He checked his watch again. 3:45 p.m. He'd been walking for 90 minutes and should start heading back toward the Federal Building. His path would take him through one more neighborhood, past a pharmacy he'd noticed earlier, and then back to the main roads. Marcus turned down a street lined with modest houses and small businesses. Ahead, he saw a young woman with auburn hair walking quickly, clutching a paper bag, checking her phone. She looked worried, distracted, the kind of distraction that made people vulnerable. He noted her presence automatically, filed it away as he did with everything else, and continued walking. Neither of them knew that in 3 minutes their paths would converge in an alley where evil was about to reveal itself. Neither of them knew that this seemingly random afternoon would change both their lives forever. Sometimes fate doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it kicks down the door with violence and terror, and the only choice is how you respond in that moment. That moment was coming. Sarah hurried down the sidewalk, her mind on Ranger waiting at home. The shortcut was working. She'd shaved 20 minutes off her usual travel time. Just a few more blocks, and she'd be home. She could give Ranger his medicine, make sure he was comfortable, maybe have time for a quick sandwich before catching the bus to work. She didn't notice the dark sedan that had been slowly cruising past her twice. She didn't see the 4 men inside, tracking her movement, communicating with hand signals. She was thinking about medication dosages and her patient load tonight, and whether she had enough dog food to last until payday. Sarah turned into an alley, a shortcut between 2 streets that would save another 5 minutes. She was halfway through when she heard the footsteps behind her. Fast footsteps. Multiple people. She spun around and her heart dropped into her stomach. 4 men were blocking the alley entrance behind her, spreading out to fill the narrow space. They were young, early 20s, dressed in baggy clothes and expensive sneakers. But it was their expressions that terrified her. Cold, predatory, the looks of people who'd done this before. "Well, well," the leader said, stepping forward. He was tall and lean with a shaved head and a teardrop tattoo under his left eye. His name was Dwayne Carter, though Sarah didn't know that yet. "Where you rushing to, pretty lady?" Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched her purse tighter. "Please, I don't want any trouble, I'm just trying to get home." "Oh, you're going to get home?" Dwayne said with a cruel smile. "But first, you're going to donate to our cause. Hand over the purse. And the phone. Nice and easy, and nobody gets hurt." Sarah's mind raced. She had maybe $40 in cash, her debit card with $50 left until payday, her phone that was 2 years old, and Ranger's medication that he desperately needed. She also had her hospital ID, her home address, her entire life in that purse. "Please," she said, hating how her voice shook. "I'm a nurse. I don't have much money. I need my medication. It's for my sick dog. You can have the cash, but please." Did we ask for a life story? This came from one of the other thugs, a heavyset man with a thick gold chain. His name was Marcus. Not the noble Marcus who was 3 blocks away, but a street predator who'd stolen the name and tarnished it with cruelty. Purse, phone. Now. Dwayne's hand moved to his waistband, and Sarah saw the grip of a gun. "Or this gets real bad, real fast." Sarah's hands shook violently as she held out her purse. Dwayne snatched it, dumping the contents onto the alley pavement. He kicked through her belongings, wallet, keys, lip balm, tissues, the bag with Ranger's medication. $43? Dwayne counted the cash with disgust. This is what you got? $43 and a maxed-out credit card? He'd already pulled her wallet apart, examining everything. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered, tears starting to flow. It's all I have. Please, can I just take the medication and go? That's when Dwayne noticed the prescription label on the antibiotics. He picked up the bag, reading it, and his expression changed to something even more sinister. Ranger, he read aloud. That a dog's name? He looked back at Sarah with new interest. You got a dog at home? Sarah's stomach twisted with dread. Please, he's sick. He's just a puppy. He needs that medicine. Dwayne looked at his three companions and grinned. Boys, you know what purebred German shepherd puppies go for? $700, maybe $1,000. He turned back to Sarah. Where's this puppy, sweetheart? Maybe we should go collect him. Turn this whole afternoon profitable. No. The word burst from Sarah before she could stop it. You can't. Please, he's all I have left. My husband died, and Ranger is all... She was sobbing now, unable to stop herself. Oh, this just keeps getting better, Dwayne said, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. A widow and her puppy. That's real tragic. He stepped closer, and Sarah could smell cigarettes and something chemical on his breath. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take us to your apartment, hand over the dog, and maybe we let you walk away from this. Please, Sarah begged, backing away until she hit the alley wall. I'll get you money. I'll borrow it. I'll do extra shifts. You'll shut up, Dwayne snapped, and suddenly the gun was out, pointed at her face. Or I'll make you shut up permanent. The other three thugs laughed and spread out, blocking any escape route. Sarah's mind went blank with terror. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. She was going to die in an alley, and Ranger would be alone, waiting for her to come home, and no one would find him until... Actually, Dwayne said, a new idea clearly forming in his cruel mind. I got a better plan. Go get the dog. Bring him here. What? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. You heard me. You live close enough to walk, right? So go get the puppy and bring him back here. You got 10 minutes. Your phone stays here with us, so don't even think about calling cops. You run, we know where you live from your ID, and we'll burn your place down. You call cops, same thing. But you come back with the dog, and maybe this ends with everybody walking away. Clear? Sarah's mind reeled. If she went home, she could grab Ranger and run. She could go to a neighbor's, call the police from their phone. But these men had her address, her ID, everything. And she'd seen their faces. If she ran, would they hunt her down? Would they really burn her apartment? The fear paralyzed her. Actually, you know what? Dwayne's voice turned even darker. I changed my mind. Why should I trust you to come back? Marcus, go with her. Make sure she don't do nothing stupid. The heavy-set thug stepped forward, grinning. No, wait! Sarah's voice rose in panic. I'll go alone. I promise I'll come back. Please! Please, please, please. Dwayne mocked her voice cruelly. You sound like a broken record, sweetheart. Tell you what, let's make this more interesting. He raised the gun and pointed it directly at Sarah's head. You got a choice to make right now. A real simple choice. Either I kill you right here, right now, or you tell me exactly where this puppy is and we go get him together. What's it gonna be? Sarah's legs gave out and she sank to her knees on the dirty alley pavement. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her vision was tunneling, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. I'm waiting, Dwayne said, and she heard the click of the gun's hammer. 3 blocks away, Marcus Webb checked his watch and decided to take one more shortcut through the alleys on his way back to the federal building. Sometimes timing is everything, Sometimes the universe puts the right person in the right place at exactly the right moment. That moment was now. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the alley as Dwayne's cruel smile widened. He pressed the cold barrel of his 9mm pistol harder against Sarah's temple, making her whimper. Ranger squirmed in her arms, the German shepherd puppy sensing his owner's terror and letting out small, frightened yelps. "You know what?" Dwayne said, his voice dripping with sadistic pleasure. "I'm tired of waiting. So here's what's going to happen, sweetheart. You're going to make a choice right now. Either I put a bullet in your head." He paused, reaching down to roughly grab Ranger by the scruff of his neck, yanking the puppy from Sarah's protective embrace. The puppy yelped in pain and fear. "Or I put a bullet in this mutt. You got 5 seconds to decide." "No, please!" Sarah's voice cracked as tears streamed down her face. "Please, don't hurt him. He's all I have left. Please!" 5. Dwayne began counting, his 3 accomplices laughing behind him. Sarah's hands trembled violently as she reached out toward Ranger. The puppy was struggling in Dwayne's grip, trying desperately to get back to her. Her mind raced through impossible calculations. How could she choose? Ranger was her last connection to Michael, her late husband. Michael had bought him 2 weeks before the accident, wanting to surprise her, wanting to start building their family. The puppy had arrived 3 days after Michael's funeral. For 8 months, Ranger had been the only reason she got out of bed some mornings, the only living thing that needed her, the only one who looked at her like she still mattered. 4. Dwayne's finger moved to the trigger, pointed now at the puppy's head. Wait, please!" Sarah sobbed, her whole body shaking. "I'll give you anything. I have money saved, please." 3. Sarah made a desperate lunge forward, trying to grab Ranger, but one of the other thugs kicked her hard in the ribs, sending her sprawling onto the dirty alley pavement. Pain exploded through her side as she gasped for air. 2! Sarah looked up at Ranger, at his innocent brown eyes, at the way he was still trying to reach her despite his fear. She thought of Michael, of his smile when he'd told her about the puppy, of how he'd said, "Every family needs a dog, Sarah, and this little guy is going to love you just as much as I do." 1. "Take me!" Sarah screamed, her voice raw with anguish. "Shoot me! Just please, let him go! Please!" Dwayne's laugh was the sound of pure evil. "Wrong answer, sweetheart. See, I think I'm gonna—" "That's enough." The voice cut through the alley like a blade, calm, quiet, but carrying an unmistakable weight of authority and lethality. It wasn't loud, but something in its tone made everyone freeze. Even Dwayne stopped mid-sentence. At the mouth of the alley, backlit by the afternoon sun, stood Marcus Webb. His 6'2" frame filled the narrow entrance, and his green Delta Force tactical uniform seemed to absorb the light around him. The American flag patch on his shoulder stood out clearly, as did the distinctive Delta Force insignia on his chest. His short-cropped dark hair and steel-gray eyes gave him the appearance of a man who had seen combat and emerged stronger for it. Marcus had been walking back to the Federal Building when he'd heard Sarah's screams. His combat instincts, honed through 17 years of special operations, had kicked in immediately. As he'd approached the alley, his mind had automatically begun the tactical assessment that had kept him alive through 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and countless classified missions in places the public would never know about. 4 hostiles, 1 civilian female, extreme distress, 1 animal, small dog, being used as leverage. Confined space, approximately 40 feet deep, 12 feet wide. Brick walls both sides, no cover for hostiles. Dumpster left side could provide concealment. Exit route blocked by my position. Hostiles armed, visible handguns on 2 subjects, likely more weapons concealed. Primary threat, subject with gun, holding dog. Imminent danger to civilian and animal. His decision was already made before he spoke. Now, as all eyes turned to him, Marcus took 3 measured steps into the alley. His hands hung loosely at his sides, but anyone trained in combat would recognize the coiled readiness in his posture. He was a spring compressed, waiting for the moment to release. Dwayne recovered first from his surprise, though he didn't lower his weapon. "You lost, soldier boy. This don't concern you. Military got no jurisdiction here." "I'm giving you one chance," Marcus said, his voice still calm. "Put down your weapons. Let the woman and the dog go. Walk away." The other 3 thugs moved to flank Dwayne, spreading out in what they probably thought was an intimidating formation. The one called Marcus, a heavyset man with a tear tattoo, pulled out his own pistol. "Man, you really don't know who you're messing with. This is our neighborhood." "One chance," Marcus repeated, not moving. "After that, I stop asking." Dwayne's face twisted into a sneer. He pressed his gun directly against Ranger's head, making Sarah scream. "You think that fancy uniform scares me? You think I care about some military boy scout? I will paint this alley with this dog's brains. Then I'll do the same to her, and then we'll see how tough you are when there's 4 of us and 1 of you." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. It was the only warning they got. What happened next would later be described by Sarah as the most terrifying and awe-inspiring thing she'd ever witnessed. To her, it seemed like Marcus simply blurred, moving so fast that her mind couldn't quite process the individual actions. But to Marcus, time seemed to slow as his training took over, every movement the product of thousands of hours of practice and real-world application. Marcus exploded forward, closing the 40-foot distance in under 3 seconds. The thug named Marcus raised his pistol, but he was far too slow. Marcus's left hand shot out in a precise strike, hitting the man's wrist at the exact pressure point that would cause involuntary muscle release. The gun clattered to the ground. In the same fluid motion, Marcus's right elbow drove upward into the man's jaw with the force of a piston. There was a sickening crack, and the thug crumpled like his strings had been cut. The second thug, a thin man with multiple facial piercings named Rodney, lunged at Marcus from the side with a knife that had appeared from somewhere in his jacket. It was a clumsy attack, telegraphed by the wind-up of his arm. Marcus sidestepped with minimal movement, caught Rodney's wrist mid-thrust, and used the man's own momentum against him. A sharp twist, a pivot of Marcus's hips, and suddenly Rodney was airborne. He crashed into the brick wall with a sound like a side of beef hitting concrete, then slid down, unconscious before he hit the ground. The third thug, seeing his 2 friends dispatched like they were nothing, made the mistake of hesitating. His name was Leon, and he was reaching for something in his waistband, probably another gun, but his hands were shaking, and his eyes were wide with sudden fear. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to be the predators here. Marcus closed the distance before Leon's hand even reached his weapon. A lightning-fast strike to Leon's solar plexus drove all the air from his lungs. As Leon doubled over, gasping, Marcus's knee came up to meet his face. Leon's head snapped back, blood spraying from his broken nose, and he went down hard. Throughout all of this, Sarah had remained on the ground, her mind struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. This man, this soldier, was moving like something out of an action movie, except it was real, happening right in front of her. Each movement was economical, precise, devastating. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation, no mercy. Now only Dwayne remained, and the gang leader's bravado had evaporated like morning dew. His hand was trembling as he held his gun against Ranger's head, his eyes darting between his unconscious friends and the approaching soldier. "Stay back!" Dwayne shouted, his voice cracking. "I swear to God I'll kill this dog, I'll do it!" Marcus stopped, now only 10 feet away. For the first time since entering the alley, his expression changed. His jaw tightened, and his eyes went cold. The kind of cold that suggested he'd looked death in the face many times and never blinked. "You're not going to shoot that dog," Marcus said quietly. "The hell I'm not." Dwayne's finger tightened on the trigger. "You take one more step and—" In a movement almost too fast to follow, Marcus's hand dropped to his tactical belt, pulled something free, and snapped forward. A tactical knife flew through the air, spinning end over end with perfect rotation. It struck Dwayne's gun hand, the pommel hitting the cluster of nerves on the back of his hand with surgical precision. Dwayne screamed as his fingers spasmed open involuntarily. The gun fell from his grip, and Ranger, sensing freedom, twisted out of his loosened grasp and scrambled toward Sarah, who caught him and held him tight. But Dwayne wasn't done. Pain and fear transformed into desperate rage. He pulled a second gun from an ankle holster. These guys had been more heavily armed than Marcus had initially assessed, and swung it toward Sarah. "You're all dead!" Dwayne screamed. He never got the shot off. Marcus covered the remaining distance in a heartbeat. His left hand caught Dwayne's wrist, redirecting the gun toward the sky. His right hand drove into Dwayne's throat with controlled force, enough to disable, not to kill, though it was a close thing. Dwayne's eyes bulged as his airway constricted. The gun went off once, the shot echoing off the alley walls, the bullet disappearing harmlessly into the air. Marcus twisted Dwayne's arm, applying leverage to the elbow joint. There was a popping sound, and Dwayne howled. The second gun fell. Marcus swept Dwayne's legs out from under him, slamming him face first into the alley pavement, then planted a knee in the middle of his back, one hand controlling his head, the other pulling his arms. Back. "Don't move." Marcus's voice was ice. Dwayne, choking and crying, didn't move. Elapsed time from first contact to complete neutralization. 14 seconds. The alley fell silent except for the sound of Dwayne's whimpering, Ranger's frightened panting, and Sarah's sobbing breaths. Marcus remained perfectly still, controlling Dwayne with minimal effort, his eyes scanning for any additional threats. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Someone had called 911 when they heard the gunshot. Marcus didn't move from his position, keeping Dwayne pinned. "Mom?" he said, his voice gentling as he addressed Sarah. "Are you hurt?" Sarah couldn't speak. She was clutching Ranger so tightly the puppy squirmed, but she couldn't make herself loosen her grip. She shook her head mutely, tears still streaming down her face. "Memphis PD will be here in about 90 seconds. Marcus continued calmly. "You're safe now. Just stay where you are and keep your hands visible when they arrive. Can you do that for me?" Sarah managed a jerky nod. "Good. What's your name?" Sarah," she stammered. "Sarah Mitchell." "I'm Marcus Webb, United States Army Delta Force. You're going to be okay, Sarah." The sirens grew louder. Marcus could hear screeching tires at the end of the alley, car doors slamming, the rapid footsteps of multiple officers approaching with weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them!" a voice shouted. "Nobody move! Active duty military, friendly!" Marcus called out clearly, not moving from his position controlling Dwayne. "4 suspects down, 1 civilian unharmed. I'm going to slowly raise my left hand to show my military ID." 3 Memphis police officers came around the corner, guns drawn, and stopped dead at the scene before them. A soldier in full Delta Force uniform kneeling on top of a suspect, 3 other men unconscious or groaning on the ground, and a young woman holding a puppy, looking shell-shocked. The lead officer, a veteran named Sergeant Dan Morris, who'd seen plenty in his 20 years on the force, had never seen anything quite like this. His eyes went from the Delta Force patches on Marcus's uniform to the efficiently disabled suspects, and understanding dawned. "Lower your weapons," Morris told his fellow officers. He holstered his own sidearm and approached cautiously. "Son, you Army?" "Yes, sir. Captain Marcus Webb, 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. I'm in Memphis on official assignment with the FBI Terrorism Task Force. I witnessed these 4 men assaulting this civilian and threatening her life and the life of her animal. I intervened. Morris looked at the 4 thugs again, noting the precise, professional nature of their injuries. I'd say you more than intervened, Captain. Jenkins, call for 4 buses and notify Detective Hayes. Tell her we've got something interesting. He turned to Sarah. Mom, are you all right? Do you need medical attention? Sarah finally found her voice. I'm okay. He saved us. They were going to kill us. They were going to kill my dog, and then me, and he... She looked at Marcus with an expression somewhere between awe and disbelief. Who are you? Marcus met her eyes, and for just a moment, the hard edge of the warrior softened slightly. Just someone who was in the right place at the right time, Mom. More police units were arriving, along with ambulances. The alley became a hive of activity as paramedics attended to the injured thugs, all of whom would survive, though they'd be wearing casts and nursing serious bruises, and crime scene technicians began photographing and documenting everything. A detective arrived, a sharp-eyed African-American woman in her 40s named Linda Hayes. She took one look at the scene, listened to Sergeant Morris's brief rundown, and let out a low whistle. Captain Webb, she said, approaching him. I'm Detective Hayes. I think we need to talk. Yes, ma'am, Marcus replied. But first, I need to make sure Ms. Mitchell is taken care of. Hayes nodded approvingly. Absolutely. Ms. Mitchell, we're going to need your statement. Would you be willing to come down to the station? We can get you cleaned up, check you out medically, and you can tell us everything that happened. Sarah looked down at Ranger, then at the 4 men being loaded onto stretchers, then finally at Marcus, still standing there in his uniform like some kind of guardian angel in tactical gear. Will he be there? She asked quietly. Will you be there? Marcus nodded. I'll be right behind you, Ms. Mitchell, I promise. As Sarah was helped to her feet by a female officer and guided toward a squad car, Ranger still clutched in her arms, Detective Hayes pulled Marcus aside. Captain, I recognize you from the briefing last week. You're working the trafficking task force with FBI, right? Yes, ma'am. Hayes looked at the 4 suspects, now being loaded into ambulances under police guard. Did you recognize any of these men? Marcus's eyes narrowed. The primary suspect, the one who was giving orders, the one I took down last. I've seen his face before. Can't place where. His name is Dwayne Carter, Hayes said quietly. And if he's who I think he is, this just got a lot bigger than a simple armed robbery. Marcus's combat instincts, which had never really turned off, suddenly went into high alert. Explain. Not here, Hayes said, glancing around at the crowd of officers and civilians that had gathered. At the station. But Captain Webb, I think you just stumbled into something connected to your investigation. And I think Ms. Mitchell just became a very important witness. Marcus looked down the alley towards the squad car where Sarah sat, still visible through the window, still holding Ranger, still looking shaken and scared. Then we need to make sure she's protected, he said quietly. Agreed, Hayes replied. Let's get downtown. We have a lot to discuss. Marcus walked toward his own vehicle to follow the convoy of police cars. He pulled out his encrypted phone and dialed a number from memory. Jake, it's Marcus. I need you at Memphis PD headquarters now. We've got a situation. Possible connection to the trafficking network. And we have a civilian who just became a witness. Yes, I'm serious. Get here fast. He hung up and looked back at the alley one more time, at the blood on the pavement, at the evidence markers being placed, at the scene of what could have been a tragedy. But sometimes, he thought, timing is everything. And sometimes being in the right place at the right moment makes all the difference between life and death. He just hoped that Sarah Mitchell understood, how much danger she might still be in. Because if Dwayne Carter was who Detective Hayes suspected, this was far from over. It was just beginning. The interrogation room at Memphis Police Department headquarters was windowless and cold, but Sarah barely noticed. She sat in a plastic chair, still holding Ranger in her lap, while a victim advocate had brought her water and a blanket. Her ribs ached where she'd been kicked, but the paramedics had confirmed nothing was broken. The physical pain was manageable. It was the emotional trauma that kept making her hands shake. Detective Linda Hayes sat across from her, a digital recorder between them, her expression sympathetic but focused. "Sarah, I know this has been incredibly difficult, but I need you to walk me through everything one more time. Start from the moment you left the pharmacy." Sarah took a shaky breath and began again, describing the shortcut through the alley, the four men emerging, their demands, and then Dwayne's cruel ultimatum. As she spoke, her voice gained strength, anger mixing with the fear. These men had tried to make her choose between her own life and Ranger's, her last connection to Michael. They'd tried to destroy the only good thing she had left. And then Captain Webb appeared. Sarah said, her voice softening. "And everything changed so fast. I've never seen anyone move like that. It was like watching someone who's done this 1,000 times." Hayes nodded thoughtfully, then pulled out a photo lineup on her tablet. "Sarah, I need you to look at these photos carefully. Take your time. Do you recognize any of these men?" Sarah studied the faces, and then she froze. Her eyes widened and her breath caught in her throat. "Him," she whispered, pointing at one of the photos. Oh my God, that's him." "Are you certain?" Hayes leaned forward. "Positive." Sarah's hand trembled as she pointed. 3 weeks ago, maybe a month, I was working the night shift in the ER at Memphis General. We had a young girl come in, maybe 16 or 17, Hispanic, scared out of her mind. She had bruises, signs of malnutrition, and what looked like restraint marks on her wrists. I was treating her when this man, she tapped the photo, came storming into the treatment room with another guy. He said she was his niece, that she'd run away from home. But something felt wrong. The girl's eyes. She was terrified of him. Hayes pulled out her notepad, writing quickly. "What happened next?" "I tried to stall, told him we needed to complete the medical examination first, that there were signs of injuries that needed to be documented. He got aggressive, said I needed to mind my own business. Then he looked right at me and said—" Sarah closed her eyes, remembering. "I know who you are, Sarah Mitchell. I know where you live. You seem like a smart girl. Smart girls know when to keep their mouths shut." And then he took the girl and left. I tried to report it, but by the time security got there, they were gone. "Did you file a police report?" Hayes asked. Sarah shook her head, shame coloring her cheeks. "I was scared. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I was terrified. After Michael died, I'm all alone. No family nearby, just me and Ranger. And this man knew my name, knew where I lived. I convinced myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe she really was his niece. Maybe I was just paranoid after everything with Michael's death." "Sarah," Hayes said gently but firmly, "you weren't paranoid. That man was Dwayne Carter, and that girl was very likely a victim of human trafficking." The color drained from Sarah's face. "Oh, God!" There was a knock on the door, and it opened to reveal Marcus, still in his Delta Force uniform, accompanied by 2 men in dark suits, FBI agents, and another man in military tactical gear matching Marcus's. "Detective Hayes," Marcus said. "This is Special Agent Rodriguez and Special Agent Chen from the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force, and this is my teammate, Sergeant Jake Sullivan, also Delta Force." Jake was a mountain of a man, 6'4" with a shaved head and a thick beard. his green Delta Force uniform stretched tight over muscular shoulders. Despite his intimidating appearance, his eyes were kind as he nodded to Sarah. Hayes gestured for them to enter. "Gentlemen, Ms. Mitchell just told us something very interesting. She encountered Dwayne Carter at Memphis General Hospital 3 weeks ago when he came to retrieve what was likely a trafficking victim." Agent Rodriguez's eyes sharpened. "That matches our intelligence. We've been building a case against Carter's organization for 8 months. He's not just muscle. He's a lieutenant in Vincent Cross's trafficking network. Cross runs one of the largest human trafficking operations in the Southeast, moving victims through Memphis to destinations across the country." Marcus stepped closer to Sarah, his presence somehow reassuring despite the intensity of the situation. "Ms. Mitchell, I need you to understand something. By intervening today, by saving you, we've put you in a complicated position. Carter's organization now knows you can identify him in connection to both the hospital incident and today's assault. They'll see you as a threat." Sarah's arms tightened around Ranger. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying they might come after you." Marcus said bluntly. "These people don't leave loose ends, but—" He held up a hand as fear flashed across her face. "We're not going to let that happen. You're under federal protection now. We're going to keep you safe while we finish dismantling this organization." "How?" Sarah asked, her voice small. Jake spoke up, his voice a deep rumble. "We've been tracking Cross's operation for months, waiting for the right moment to move. Thanks to your encounter with Carter and what happened today, we have probable cause to accelerate our timeline. We're hitting them tomorrow." Agent Chen pulled out a tablet showing surveillance photos. "We know where Cross's main warehouse is. We know his distribution network. What we didn't have was direct witness testimony connecting Carter to a specific trafficking victim. You've given us that, Ms. Mitchell. With your statement, we can tie Carter directly to the girl from the hospital, and our records show that same night, a Hispanic female matching your description was logged into Cross's warehouse facility." "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. Detective Hayes stood. "Now, we get you somewhere safe. We have a protected location where you'll stay with a police guard. Tomorrow afternoon, when the task force moves on Cross's warehouse, Carter and his organization will be too busy dealing with federal raids to worry about you. And once they're in custody, you'll be free to go back to your life." Sarah looked at Marcus, searching his face. "Will you be there? Tomorrow, I mean?" Marcus nodded. "Jake and I will be leading the tactical element of the raid. It's what we do." "And after?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "After tomorrow, do I just go back to normal? Pretend this never happened?" Marcus crouched down so he was at eye level with her, his steel-gray eyes softening. "Sarah, you're one of the bravest people I've met. You protected your dog with your own life. You tried to help a girl you didn't know at the hospital, even after being threatened. Tomorrow, when we take down Cross's organization, it'll be partly because of you. That takes courage." For the first time since the alley, Sarah felt something other than fear. She felt a flicker of strength returning. The next afternoon, the sun blazed down on an industrial district in South Memphis, its rays glinting off the corrugated metal of abandoned warehouses. Inside a surveillance van 3 blocks away, Marcus and Jake studied tactical maps on laptop screens, while FBI agents coordinated with local SWAT teams. "Target warehouse has minimal external security," Jake said, pointing at infrared imagery. "But intelligence suggests 15 to 20 hostiles inside, most armed. Victims are being held in the eastern section here." Marcus nodded, checking his gear methodically. His Delta Force uniform was supplemented now with tactical vest, communications headset, and his primary weapon, an HK-416 rifle that had been with him through countless operations. Rules of engagement: capture if possible, neutralize if necessary. Agent Rodriguez said. Priority 1 is victim safety. Priority 2 is taking Vincent Cross alive. We need him to roll on his network contacts. A radio crackled. Team 2 in position. Team 3 ready. Marcus keyed his mic. Team 1 ready, execute on my mark. At the safe house across town, Sarah sat on a couch with Ranger, watched over by 2 U.S. Marshals. A television played the news, but she couldn't focus on it. Her mind kept returning to Marcus, to the calm certainty in his voice, to the way he'd promised to keep her safe. Ms. Mitchell, one of the marshals said gently, try not to worry. Delta Force doesn't fail. Marcus approached the warehouse from the south side, Jake and 4 other operators moving in perfect synchronization. No words were needed. They'd done this dance hundreds of times. Hand signals indicated positions, threats, movements. They reached the door. Marcus tested it. Locked. Jake produced a breaching charge, placed it carefully. 3, 2, 1, execute. The charge detonated with a controlled blast, the door flying inward. Marcus was through first, rifle up, scanning for targets. The warehouse interior was a maze of storage containers and makeshift walls. Shouts erupted. A gunman appeared from behind a crate. Marcus's training took over. Threat identified, aim acquired, controlled pair of shots center mass. The gunman dropped. Contact left. Jake's voice in the earpiece. The warehouse erupted in chaos. More gunmen emerged, but they were street thugs with guns, not trained soldiers. They had no chance against Delta Force operators. Marcus and his team moved through the space like ghosts, precise and lethal. Every corner cleared, every threat neutralized with professional efficiency. Victims located, Jake called. East section, 12 females, ages 15 to 25. They're alive. Securing now. Marcus pushed deeper into the warehouse, tracking towards the office section where intelligence suggested Cross would be. He heard footsteps above, someone running. He signaled to his team, and they moved up a metal staircase. At the top, a hallway with 3 doors. Behind the center door, voices arguing. Marcus didn't knock. He kicked the door off its hinges and entered with his rifle raised. Vincent Cross was a tall man in an expensive suit, looking nothing like the monster he was. He reached for a gun on his desk. Marcus put 3 red laser dots on his chest. Don't, Marcus said simply. Cross froze. Vincent Cross, you're under arrest, Agent Rodriguez said, entering behind Marcus with FBI agents. Human trafficking, kidnapping, conspiracy. A crash of glass cut him off. One of Cross's bodyguards burst through a side door, gun raised. But before he could fire, a blur of fur and teeth launched through the air. Ranger, the German shepherd puppy, who somehow had escaped the safe house and followed the police vehicles, who somehow had tracked Sarah's protector to this warehouse, clamped onto the gunman's wrist with surprising strength for a young dog. The man screamed, dropping his weapon. Jake was on him instantly, securing him. Marcus would later learn that Ranger had slipped past the marshals during a shift change, that the puppy had apparently decided his owner's protector needed protection too. It was a breach of protocol, but as Marcus watched Jake scratch Ranger's ears while securing the gunman, he couldn't help but smile. Good dog, Marcus said. The raid was over in 12 minutes, 17 hostiles in custody, including Vincent Cross and Dwayne Carter. 12 trafficking victims rescued, now receiving medical attention and counseling. 0 casualties on the law enforcement side. 2 months. Later, Sarah sat in a coffee shop in a better neighborhood, one she could now afford after receiving a commendation and bonus from the hospital for her bravery and witness testimony. Ranger, now bigger and wearing a service dog vest that Marcus had helped her get, sat at her feet. The door opened, and Marcus walked in, wearing his Delta Force uniform as always. His assignment in Memphis had been extended for additional training coordination with local agencies. What had started as professional duty had become something more, a friendship that deepened with every coffee meeting, every walk in the park with Ranger, every shared conversation about life and loss and moving forward. "Hey," Marcus said, sliding into the seat across from her. His steel-grey eyes were warm now, the warrior's edge softened in her presence. "Hey yourself," Sarah replied, smiling. "How was the training?" "Productive, but not as good as this." He reached across the table, and Sarah met him halfway, their hands clasping. Ranger's tail wagged. 3 months ago, Sarah had been alone, broken, just surviving. Michael's death had left her adrift, but sometimes she thought, life has a way of bringing the right people together at the right moment. Sometimes the person who saves you becomes the person who helps you remember how to live again. "I have something to show you," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. He showed her a video. Ranger, now enrolled in Marcus's advanced protection dog training program, perfectly executing a defensive maneuver. "He's got natural talent. Give him another year, and he'll be one of the best protection dogs in the state." Sarah laughed, looking down at her puppy, who was currently trying to catch his own tail. "He's pretty special." "So is his owner," Marcus said quietly. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Sarah knew that her story, which had started with such terror and trauma, was becoming something else entirely. A story about finding strength she didn't know she had. About second chances. About how sometimes the worst day of your life can lead you to the person who helps you find your way back to being whole. "Thank you," Sarah said softly. "For everything. For saving us. For staying." Marcus squeezed her hand. "That's what I do. Protect people who matter. And you matter, Sarah Mitchell. You and this knucklehead dog both matter a lot." Ranger barked, as if agreeing. And somewhere in Memphis, as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city, a widow, a warrior, and a German shepherd began writing a new chapter together. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear about courage, protection, and second chances. And remember, evil exists in this world, but so do good people willing to stand against it. Sometimes they wear a Delta Force uniform and show up exactly when you need them most.